Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, March 17th. LA Galaxy 1-1 draw up in Portland. A point on the road, rescuing a point on the road, not the end of the world. Galaxy keep a little bit of that winning momentum off of Herediano. So 1-1 and get 1 point, their first point in MLS in 2025. Doesn't help them, still at the bottom of the table on both the Western Conference and the overall standings. But you know what? Close your eyes to the standings for a little bit. Let this LA Galaxy team get healthy, and then we can start sort of matching things up. We're going to talk about the game in Portland. We're going to talk about the dates for your CONCACAF Champions Cup games, and then getting you, of course, pointed at least in the general direction of Minnesota as the LA Galaxy once again on the road. To help us do all that, we are joined once again by Mr. Kevin Baxter. Kevin, how's it going, bud?
All right. I just, when you said that, I just decided I wanted to look up the standings because it seems to me that, you know, the West kind of looks upside down.
Yeah, it is a little
Vancouver,
goofy.
San Diego. Vancouver's unbeaten. San Diego's unbeaten. St. Louis is unbeaten. Colorado's unbeaten. Then Minnesota, San Jose, 8th. LAFC, Seattle, 10th. I thought they were going to be really. I still think they'll be really good.
I think they're going to be fine.
The Galaxy at the bottom with 1 point. Is it time to panic? Should we start panicking?
No, to God, no. Just let everything play out. I mean, Seattle's going through the same problem the Galaxy are right now. They have like 12 injuries up there, and the Galaxy, hey, getting a little healthier. Actually, if you're excited about anything with the LA Galaxy, it's the fact that the injury list is getting a lot smaller, right? It's starting to shrink
or larger,
down.
depending. I mean, Royce wasn't available. Fagundes with an injury.
Yeah, Fagundes played however many minutes. You can tell me he's injured all you want, but he played, 67, 70 minutes?
I'm not telling you. I'm not telling you. Greg Vanney is telling you.
I'm just here. We can go look it up right now. But let's see. Garces didn't come in. 89 minutes. Yeah, Diego Fagundes is really injured. By the way, he probably is. That's not a knock on Diego Fagundes. It's more of like, Jesus, this guy is like just continuing to like pound it. And the Galaxy have relied on him too, right? How much have the Galaxy relied on Diego Fagundes? How much have they relied on Cerrillo? How much have they relied on Gabriel Peck, right? I mean, these guys are playing minutes like hell won't have it, Kevin, and it's a big wear and tear on the body. So it doesn't surprise me.
I do not knock Diego Fagundes anymore, as you know. Why don't they just bring in like Mark Delgado or Brugman or something? Take some of those.
It would be nice.
Those guys.
It would be nice. No, an interesting game overall. I mean, just to look at it again, the standings to me right now are what they are. If you're a Galaxy fan, don't look at the standings for a little bit, and that's fine. You know why? Because this team is going to be better, and I think you're starting to see a little bit of a turn. The Hammer was texting me. He goes, You played against undefeated Vancouver Whitecaps. You played against an undefeated now San Diego side, right? That is as you were pointing out in the standings. He's like, there's
the three teams they played up until Portland are all unbeaten.
Yeah, St. Louis, like I think still hasn't allowed a goal. If that is still a thing, right? So maybe they ran into some good teams right at the beginning, right when they were at their lowest. But it also is that the Galaxy, through those first 2 or 3 games, really didn't see the Galaxy that we expected to see. I think we're starting to see a little bit more of that. I would say that the effort between Herediano and Portland was similar. And it's just that Portland is a better team than Herediano was, certainly whenever the Galaxy are playing Herediano at home, right? I want to, that team not in Costa Rica is a different team. And so you see Herediano there, and you can sort of say, okay, I get what the Galaxy were trying to do, but they should have been the better team, and they showed they were the better team. Against Portland, a little bit, again, I don't think Portland's a great team, but on the road, on the turf, all those things, the Galaxy put together at least an effort or an energy level that I thought was consistent from the Herediano game, which is maybe what Greg Vanney was looking for whenever he basically almost repeated that lineup from the Herediano game. It was an interesting look just to see it.
Not just, I don't want to leave everybody hanging, but what Greg said after the game about Diego Fagundes is Diego came into the game with a little bit of a hip injury, and so we were hoping that we could see out the game without him, but they had to leave him in. So, but the Herediano game reminded me a lot of the way the Galaxy played last year. A lot of possession, on the front foot the whole game, very aggressive, pushing forward the whole game. As you think that carried over to Portland, because as you mentioned, certainly the opposition was much stronger, much different, but they did seem to turn a corner against Herediano. Just because they got 1 point in Portland doesn't mean it was a poor performance, because the level of competition was so much better.
It was. It's better. Let's not give Portland a ton of credit, because I think Portland's in trouble. I think Phil Neville's in trouble. But they're also trying to work some new guys into the stuff. So just watching the game, it at least showed the signs, Kevin, of what I would genuinely like to call sort of the Greg Vanney way of playing soccer, right? Which is, we know how the LA Galaxy struggle. We know how they succeed under the Greg Vanney system. And for me, the success is, in the passing and the timing of the passing and the ability to control the ball. And whenever Greg's teams don't fire on all cylinders, he's going to tell you that they rush their chances. And I think that's what you saw in the first half. You saw an LA Galaxy side that came out, heels ablazing, coming in and putting a lot of pressure on Portland in the first, 6-7 minutes, and then sort of fading away from that game a little bit. But then you saw an LA Galaxy team, which is something I think we've talked about, Kevin, and certainly something that I believe we've talked about on the podcast, is that where have the second half adjustments been for the LA Galaxy? Because last year we would look at the LA Galaxy and say, oh, look, there's the second half, they play better in the second half. Where is that growing into the game? Where's the second half adjustment?
The bench is a lot shallower.
It is, and that's certainly a reason for it. I 100% agree. But I will say that in this game, I thought there was a good second half adjustment. I thought the LA Galaxy were more dangerous in the second half than they were in the first half. I read this comment, but I felt the exact same way. I think it's humorous that the LA Galaxy scored the way that they did. Here's a team that loves possession, loves build-up play, loves the intricate passing, loves to get into triangles and overloads and all this special thing, and they score a goal on a direct route one over-the-top ball to Christian Ramirez. It was Zanka to Christian Ramirez, who came on as a substitute. Ramirez did, and they score a goal from that. I think that's hysterical, just because of how normally Greg Vanney teams play, that was the thing that sort of unlocked Portland.
But you know what a beautiful pass. And the thing I thought about when I saw that pass was, we've talked a lot about new guys. These are two new guys, Zanka and Ramirez, and never played together. They're both new to the Galaxy, never played for Greg Vanney. The chemistry, that there had to be some chemistry, Zanka had to know that Ramirez was ready to go. Ramirez had to know that Zanka could make that pass. There's some chemistry developing, and you talk about the second half adjustments. Ramirez was on the bench till the 73rd minute, comes on, scores 8 minutes later. So that's a pretty good second half adjustment. But the bench just is shallower. You don't have guys like Brugman and Delgado to go to. You're starting your best players. So that's a little bit of a problem. I do think one other thing that happened, though, is we talk about they got a point. We're celebrating they got a point. They almost didn't get a point.
Yes.
And maybe they shouldn't have got a point, because there was a foul in the box at the end of the game that should have been a penalty shot and wasn't.
Right.
And we could talk about that if we want. But my point was going to be that it was a break for the Galaxy. You can say maybe the referee made the right call, but whatever. But if that went to VAR, it's probably going to be called a penalty. That was a break that went the Galaxy's way, and they got a point out of it. And I think any coach, any player will tell you, it really helps to be good, but it really helps to be lucky and good. And I think the Galaxy got a little lucky on that
By the way, I'd like to point out to everybody, Kevin's trying to end this show in 10 minutes because now he's hit on every talking point that we've decided that was important to touch on, including the penalty. How about we start with the lineup, Kevin? That's always a good place to go. But this is an interesting one. I think the lineup talk just in itself is enough to cover most of the show because the LA Galaxy have been rolling out similar lineups, doing different things. And Greg Vanney, we've been looking at it, has been fighting this internal battle between, John McCarthy and Novak Micovic and who's going to be the starting goalkeeper. And so far, it's been Novak Micovic, who's been starting all the MLS games. And then it has been, John McCarthy starting the CONCACAF Champions Cup games. And then we get into this game in Portland. I actually said I thought Micovic will get this whole entire month to sort of figure things out, Kevin. And I think that maybe Greg Vanney threw a curveball in there because John McCarthy gets a start in an MLS game. That's a big deal. That's an important thing that we have to talk about because here we are, Novak Micovic, anointed the number one whenever they sort of started this season. In the preseason, he was playing with the number one guys. It was, the Galaxy start the season, he's the number one goalkeeper. I think Greg Vanney was trying to play patient with everybody and talking to us and saying, I'm not going to make decisions in the heat of the moment, but, we want to see him develop. We want to see Novak. Listen, we've gone over the reasons why they want Novak Micovic to sort of be the number one goalkeeper. We talked about the investment that they have in him just in transfer fees and all that stuff. We've talked about the fact that they think that he is a better distributor than John McCarthy. And as much as I love John McCarthy, certainly if you watch the Portland game, there were hints that Novak Micovic could do better than what John McCarthy did. Having said that, John McCarthy got this start, played relatively solid, had to make a few saves because Portland was rather toothless for most of the night anyway. And came in and did himself no harm. I don't know how we're judging this though now, Kevin. I mean, John McCarthy did a good job. Are you starting in Minnesota now, or are you going back to Novak Micovic? Are we switching back?
No,
What's going on?
If I'm Greg Vanney, McCarthy is my goaltender, and I think if you look at this, I think what Greg Vanney, his decision is who is going to be the better goalkeeper over the next 10 years. Clearly, Novak is going to be, and Greg said, we'll get to what Greg said. Greg had some pointed comments about a number of players, which I found unusual. I think we both found unusual, but I certainly did because Greg has always, at least in speaking to the media, has always tried to take the positive side and really not criticize. He criticized a few guys. If you read between the lines, he was a little critical of Novak. And here's where I think he is. The Galaxy need points right now. They need wins. They need ties. They need points right now. Novak may be the better goalkeeper. He may be the starting goalkeeper later this season. But right now, Greg wants to arrest this slide. And I think McCarthy is the guy, if you said we have to actually get a result today, I think McCarthy is the safe option. You put him out there. If you say we're building for the future, I think Novak gets put out there. And what Greg said after the game, he said, I'm not making a decision today, which is what he said earlier. He said, I'm not going to pick a starter. But if you read between the lines, he said with Novak, we like his upside.
Yeah.
That means we like what he can do.
No, we like what he can become. That's the upside. We like what we think he can become. That is what upside is.
And then what he said about McCarthy is he's proven his stability. So again, we need a result today. McCarthy is the safe option, not sexy, not going to do a lot of amazing things, but he's going to be stable, and we need to get stable right now as we're figuring all this stuff out. Novak will be back. But I think he's going with McCarthy right now, and I think McCarthy will start in Minnesota until the Galaxy get their mojo back.
But to me, so again, the upside on Novak, right? Better distribution, a really great shot stopper, like all those things that we've sort of talked about. I've been disappointed by his command of the box. I've been disappointed by his aggressiveness, and I think that John McCarthy gets pinned with that a lot too. Is his aggressiveness in the box. If you watch against Portland, he had to come out and make one really I need to come out and get this ball, and he went out and got it, and he collected it. But it's interesting to me. They like what Novak Micovic can become, right? Or could become, because there's no guarantee. An upside is not a guarantee. It's we think that this is what your upper level is, and we think that, this is a development for the LA Galaxy. We think we can develop you into something, and not only that, we want to develop you into something so that, one, you're a good goalkeeper for us, and two, we can sell you. Right? That's ultimately where this seems to go. But here's the thing is it's we like the upside of Novak, but we need the now of John McCarthy. And if you're John McCarthy, your now is an MLS Cup winning goalkeeper. I mean, that's what he was last year.
Two-time.
Yeah,
MLS
two-time.
Cup
He came in more so with the LA Galaxy, all right? Certainly, right? But that's why why I pinned that with him with him. And to me, it's like, looking at John McCarthy, it's like goalkeepers play for a while. Do you think that there's this slope that John McCarthy's going on, that he's going to fall off this slope? And it doesn't seem like it. I have so many. I'm now more confused. I'll be honest. I follow this very closely, as I think our listeners know. We follow this closely. I had a pretty good idea that Greg wasn't going to move on Novak. I think you're right, stopping the slide a little bit, trying to get more confidence back there. But it feels like Novak Micovic is in the doghouse again, and that seems like a weird place to be for a guy who you said, here's the keys to the Porsche, go drive it around a little bit, and the kid crashes the Porsche, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm taking the keys away. Well, it's like, who gave him the keys? So I don't know. This to me starts getting into bigger things, because we have been told that Novak Micovic is a better distributor of the ball. What we saw in practice leading up to that was that he was not. We've been told that Novak Micovic is a better shot stopper. And what we saw in practice in these first couple games is that he's not, right? But again, I think that that's more stage fright at this point than anything else. But this is a guy who beat his chest last year, who skipped a plane ride, got suspended basically for a game, saying that he wanted to be the number one starter. And he came in here, and I'm surprised by the performances that I've seen, knowing what the quote unquote upside was. That's all.
Well, yeah. If we buy that quote unquote upside and just assume everything that we're told is right, it's going to be interesting to see how he responds to this. And this will be the key going forward, because he did have that little temper tantrum last year, which I don't know where that came from. McCarthy was playing really well. The team was playing really well. I mean, you're not going to upset that. But they gave him the chance this year. And if he looks at it and says, look, you didn't give me enough of a chance, I needed some more games to really prove what I can do, that's not the correct response. And that's not the response an old school guy like Vanney is going to want to hear. What he's going to want to hear is, yes, I made some mistakes. I need to get better. I need to earn your trust. I need to win the job back. That's what he should say. If he says that, he'll be fine. If he starts pointing fingers and blaming his defenders or talking about other things, or they didn't score enough goals for me, that's not going to work. But again, talking about Greg Vanney speaking after the game, and remember, it was after he got his first point, so and got a good call in his favor at the end of the game. Greg sort of came into the post-game press conference a little bit locked and loaded. Novak wasn't the only guy that, I don't know if that's really criticism, but Garces came in for some thinly veiled criticism as well, and it was the same kind of stuff as Novak, making mistakes.
Well, again, we go back to the starting lineup with Aude getting the start, Yoshida getting the start, Zanka in place of Emiro Garces. That was the big one. Cerrillo in there, Fagundes in there, Gabriel Peck, Isaiah Parente, Tucker Lepley, by the way, little firefly. Tucker Lepley and Harbor Miller, just good Lord, the engines on both of those kids. And I thought Parente, again, was good in moments. I'm not expecting him to be perfect, but he seems to be growing into that position, and that's a good thing. So Miguel Berry gets a start over Christian Ramirez, right? And then you had John McCarthy in goal. So that was it. But looking at Emiro Garces, here's a guy on this podcast I have talked about that has been the best player for the LA Galaxy this year in moments, right? I will say overall, it's probably Gabriel Peck still, of all the things that he's trying to do. But if you're watching Emiro Garces and what he's able to do, he's outstanding. But we have highlighted on this show many times that he causes problems as much as he fixes problems. And some of his great speed that you see is in service of him getting back and covering his own butt whenever he messes up. So we know that that's a project. We know that Garces is a project. And if you've been watching this and watching Garces, you know that this is a project for Greg Vanney. So this to me is project talk. This is, hey, Emmy, we need you to be more on the ball. We need you to find good passes. We need you to be looking forward. As a center back, you can defend, and that's great. And we love your speed and your recovery speed, and that's great. But in this system, in what we want to do with you, you have to be more. And that was Greg Vanney talking about. He wants Emiro Garces to be more. Our friend Alex Ruiz, co-host Alex Ruiz, put out this one and basically quoting Greg Vanney in this, but he says it's a learning thing for Emmy. He's got some great natural gifts, and now it's about tactically becoming more aware and more connected to the entire group as we continue to build this team forward and what we want it to be able to do. Now, that's the nice part of the quote, really. because the bad part of the quote, or at least the more pointed part of the quote there, was I think let's see.
When I feel like Kemi, we need him to be more involved and willing to get on the ball, help us in possession. He said, I think his decisions defensively need to become more consistently reliable. One of the things that Alex Ruiz did say too, and it wasn't part of a quote, I think it was his own interpretation, is that part of the problem is Garces looked good last year because he just kind of, pushed the ball forward and Ricky Puig got it and ran the next 50 yards up the field and everything was fine. Ricky's not there. And so Garces needs to come forward a little bit more. He needs to be more on the ball. He needs to be more of, not a playmaker, but he needs to be a better passer because Ricky's not coming back and no one else in that midfield is coming back. Garces has to dribble the ball, bring it up the field, pass it upfield. And that's just not apparently what his strong suit is right now.
Right.
And until Ricky comes back, someone's going to have to do that.
Yeah, I don't think they wanted to replace Ricky, but as you watch with Zanka, watch how many times he takes the space in front of him. Watch how many times he passes to break lines from the back, right? And that's not even just on the goal. Here's what Greg Vanney said specifically about Emiro Garces over top. He said over top of Zanka, or Zanka over top of Emiro Garces. He says, Zanka played and not Emiro because he's more under control and he's more involved. That is... If you want to flip that quote, so that way you can understand what that means, he's more under control, he's more involved, which means Emiro Garces is out of control and not involved, right?
Involved. Exactly.
I mean, that is what he's saying. That's pointed. That's almost as pointed as Greg Vanney gets. I think that's a call out. It's not. Again, it's not in disservice to Emiro Garces because they got Emmy in that game. But ultimately, they brought him in the 90th minute. And Greg Vanney said that even whenever they brought him in, it kind of unbalanced the formation and unbalanced the Galaxy, and they ended up having to defend more than they wanted to. But he just said that Emiro Garces is out of control, or he said he wants Zanka is in control. So let's not misquote him. He said Zanka is in control, and then Emiro Garces comes in and, to your point, makes a challenge at the top of the box that could be interpreted by some people as a penalty. Certainly, if it went against LA Galaxy, I can imagine the hour-long podcast I'd be doing on that specific call and what goes down for it. But those are the things. Emiro Garces makes decisions that hurt the Galaxy sometimes. He's done it already this year. He's cost the LA Galaxy games. He has done it last year where he has given up goals and cost the LA Galaxy heartbreak. So for as good as he is, and I am the biggest Emiro Garces fan whenever it comes to what he's able to do, his speed, his talent, his defensive abilities. Kevin, I even said on Thursday night show, maybe you were right. Maybe you could put Garces in the winger role because I watched him on the right-hand side tear down and make a cross and do all those fun. I'm more with you now than I was before. I'll still say that I'm with Greg Vanney. He doesn't distribute, and he's out of control sometimes. So that's my big issue with sort of putting him there. But having said that, Emiro Garces is an immense talent. So that's the whole thing that we're still arguing about with Micovic, right? Is Micovic an immense talent? Have we seen that? We've seen hints of it. We saw it in cup games that there are hints of it. But have we actually seen something from Novak Micovic that makes us say, man, this guy is an immense talent. This is why the LA Galaxy got him. This is why he's the number one goalkeeper. The problem is, if you're Novak Micovic, you need to be making the case so clearly that John McCarthy shouldn't be in the picture anymore. And I'm sorry, if you and I are playing a game tomorrow and we have to bet our houses on it, I'm putting John McCarthy in that goal for the LA Galaxy instead of Novak Micovic. Going back to Emiro Garces is, if you have a game that I need to win tomorrow and I'm betting my house on it, I'm probably going to start Emiro Garces because I'm going to live with the issues that he causes. But because he's such an immense talent, I want him in there. Do you think that am I talking out of two sides of my mouth? I'm sure I am, but does that make sense to me? We've seen that.
Yeah, it does. But first of all, before we move on, I want to quickly just go over and correct me where I'm wrong. But what we're talking about with that penalty was in stoppage time. Garces had just come in for Zanka, I think. He made a ridiculous challenge at the top of the box. It was inside the box. It was close, but it was clearly inside the box.
I don't say that. It wasn't clearly inside the box. Nobody thinks it's clearly inside the box. It might have been on the line. That was the whole thing. Don't fall into the Portland. I watched this thinking it was clear and obvious and there was going to be a 7-minute review of this particular play. There was not, because I was watching it. So I know what you're saying, but yes.
He got no ball. He took down one, maybe two Portland attackers, but the ball spilled out and a Galaxy alum, Ari Lassiter, took a shot when the ball spilled out. And so the referee's call apparently was playing the advantage to Portland, that if Ari Lassiter can take a shot, Portland had the advantage, and therefore we're not going to go back and look at the tackle, which they probably should have done on VAR. But back to your other point.
Wait, hold on. We can't just leave that because I think there's things in there that are not correct, right? That we have to touch on. One is, I think if that would have happened to the LA Galaxy, that we'd all be talking about this for, the next 3 weeks about how the Galaxy got screwed. I feel that. I understand that. I'm just trying to say that what the referee did may actually be correct. It's just, why would you ever do that? So the idea was that Emiro Garces took out the Portland player at the top of the box. Now, whether it was on the line or inside the box, it is a question mark, because if you watch the angle, you're not over top of it. It looks like it's in the box. It does. It looks like it's in the box. But the thing is, if the referee actually called advantage, there is no going back to that play, which is crazy. But that's not a correct interpretation. To me, the correct interpretation is if you play advantage and Ari Lassiter gets a shot off because he is then gaining the advantage from the ball coming to him, then that play is over. That's correct anywhere else on the field. The problem is you have two advantage calls. There's advantages that the other team actually has an advantage, right, Kevin? So if you're the Portland Timbers, you tell me which of these scenarios you would like. Would you like a penalty kick from the spot with nobody else in front of the goalkeeper? Do you find that more advantageous? Or do you find Ari Lassiter trying to shoot through traffic with Maya Yoshida coming out trying to close him down? Which of those is more advantageous?
What if Lassiter makes the shot, gets the goal, and then the referee says, no.
No, he wouldn't do that, though.
Off the scoreboard.
No, but then you have, yes, absolutely, you could. But just the advantage, like, as soon as you saw that foul at the top of the box, because there's some lag time there, a referee who's experienced either says, now, here's the thing, the referee may have thought that was outside the box. And if he thinks it's outside the box, then he plays advantage. But then can VAR go in there? They probably can't, because the advantage was played. And is it clear and obvious enough? It gets into a real conundrum of things. This is not as clear-cut as Portland fans would have you want to know. And I'm saying this, I think that, in a realistic world, if the referee thinks that's inside the box, he better be pointing to the penalty kick. Because there is no team on the face of this earth that thinks taking a shot from just on the edge of the box with somebody charging out at you is more advantageous than taking a penalty kick where you have a 73% chance of making it.
Well, but in that same vein, I understand what you're saying. And I think that if Ari Lassiter makes a shot and they say, well, no, we're going to bring that back and penalty kick, and then McCarthy makes the save, that would be even worse. But if there's an offside call, you allow the play to continue, correct? Right. Mm-hmm. Even if the VAR official believes the player is offside, he lets the play continue, then he calls offside. Why would that same philosophy not work here? Let the advantage continue. Let's see what happens, and then go back and review the foul that happened before we played advantage.
I think if it's advantage, then you take that out of VAR's hand. It's a really interesting question. I'd love to have somebody from Pro on. Maybe I can make that happen. I bet I could pull that. We could get somebody from Pro on here and have them actually. We'll have to be nice to referees. It'll be something different for us. But anyway, just the whole deal. But the bottom line is that Emiro Garces causes consternation in that particular play, and basically the Galaxy could have very easily gifted that a penalty kick and lose that game 2-1 in a game where they were probably more dangerous in the second half. And by the way, the referee watching that game back made many perplexing calls on the night. Like 100%. We were in one of those games again, Kevin, and we seem to get into them every once in a while where I have no idea what a foul is. I have no idea what a yellow card is. He swallowed his whistle for large swaths of the game. There was overly physical tackles. There were 2 feet going in. There was all sorts of crazy stuff. Then all of a sudden there's soft yellows being given, and you're like, wait, those weren't even fouls like 2 minutes ago. So the consistency was not there. Having said that, Portland's going to feel aggrieved for that last play, and I understand why.
What I wanted to say about Garces and Novak before we got on this tangent about the penalty was I think it's something very interesting going on. And again, Vanney doesn't usually use the media, and I think calling guys out publicly is a new tactic for him. And perhaps he's getting a little impatient. Perhaps he's kind of reached the end of his rope a little bit. Perhaps he feels like this is a critical juncture. He doesn't, again, there's a lot of season left, but he doesn't want this slide to become a waterfall. And so I think what he's saying about both those players is, hey, both you guys are really good. Man, the upside is incredible. You are super talented guys, but we can't make mistakes. Right now, We don't have our big guns out there. We don't have Ricky and Paintsill, who apparently is getting very close to coming back. We don't have those guys out there. We can't make up for some of these mistakes, back up the field. So we need you guys to use your talent, but we need you to be smarter and stop making these ridiculous little mistakes. And if you don't, you're not going to get playing time.
Yeah, but it's also interesting to see that Tucker Lepley is keeping his spot right now. It's interesting that Harbor Miller kept his spot, right? And by the way, I'm not saying they shouldn't. I thought Lepley was lively again. I thought he was relentless in just the amount of energy that he brings with and attacks with. Harbor Miller the same. I can't believe that kid is 17. It makes me feel I actually feel worse about myself every time I see Harbor Miller play. I'm like, he's 17 years old and he's out there playing with grown men like they don't even, like he didn't realize this was like, the highest level of soccer in the United States. So I think this is really interesting. I think Vanney seemed a little teed up too, and I don't know what to make of that. Maybe he thought, and I think he certainly talked about how in the second half, he thought that the Galaxy were the better team and that maybe they should have been able to score some more goals. Speaking of which, Miguel Berry and the first goal, as much as I love me some Miguel Berry, watching him defend on a corner kick in a spot where he should anticipate a striker being to is definitely not one of his strong suits on that, as he leaves the player wide open on the near post. John McCarthy ain't going to stop that. Nobody's going to stop that if you let somebody score from about 3 yards out. And Barry just failed to move with his man. I don't know if you want your striker on the number 9, but sometimes that's a good play just because, like a number 9 on a number 9, Kevin, just because they think the same and maybe they'll both be going for the ball the same. But defense and trying to get there ahead of a striker is super important, and Miguel Berry fell flat-footed on that. It's poor marking. It's a set-piece goal. It's the second phase. We always call first phase and second phase. I know Vanney does it too, but first phase is the initial corner kick, and then second phase is any of the rebound that sort of comes out and gets reset if it doesn't get cleared, right? So you clear the first phase, but you can't clear the second phase. And Miguel Berry absolutely on point to get beat there at the near post. So for me, it's like little things, because the Galaxy, I thought, played well enough to have that game be 0-0 for a lot of the time and be playing for the win down at the end. And by the way, they scored. Christian Ramirez scored. He's starting to get more confident now, of course. Now that's 2 goals in 2 games for Ramirez. He comes in off the bench. He provides the over-the-top. He was also playing. The Galaxy shifted into a 4-4-2 as well. Matt Provino, by the way, said the Galaxy scored in the tactics-free zone, right? Matt Doyle calls it tactics-free time, which is basically like the last 10 or 12 minutes of a game whenever you're losing. There are no tactics. You're just trying to score, and you're just trying to throw balls places. And so Zanka over the top is technically in the tactics-free zone there, in all those things. But for me, that was a different look. I have no opinion yet on Nascimento, besides the fact he's taller than I thought he was going to be. He looks like he belongs out on the field. I always felt like from the pictures he looked shorter, but he's taller. But I don't think we got to see a lot of him to sort of know what the LA Galaxy got out of Nascimento yet.
But you did see him, and you mentioned earlier that injuries are getting better, and Royce was not there.
Right.
There have been a number of different reasons why that is. A little worried about Diego Fagundes, whether that hip thing is going to become worse now that he played almost the whole game on turf.
90 minutes, yes.
But we got, Mickey Imani came back. He came off the bench in this game.
Right.
Nascimento played off the bench in this game. So
right.
the Galaxy are getting healthier. But one thing I wanted to say about Harbor Miller that I think is even more impressive, the fact that he is so confident and playing so well as a teenager, is the position. And by that, I mean, if you're an attacking midfielder or a forward, yes, there's a lot of things you have to know. But basically, it's the game that everybody plays on the playground. Run forward, get the ball, try to put it in the net. He's not playing that position. He's playing defense, and he's got to communicate with his goalkeeper and his other teammates on the back line. He has to work with the midfielder and the forward in front of him. He has to have his head on a swivel the whole time. He has to know where his teammates are. He can't get beat behind him. He has to bring the ball forward in this kind of offense that Greg Vanney's playing. It's a veteran position, I think, on the back line. There's a lot of things that you need to know, and you have to. You're not the most important person. As a striker, you kind of are. You're very selfish. All you do is score. As a defender, there's a lot of other things that you need to do, and you need to sacrifice your own performance sometimes to help the team. You need to dive in front of shots. You need to put your face sometimes in front of a ball coming off someone's foot. And he's doing that.
Yeah.
And I think that is the most impressive thing for me, that not only is he playing well, but the position he's playing at his age and with the confidence that he's playing, it's really remarkable.
We want to get your questions, so fill out those super chats, send them on in. Gustavo with the $10 super chat says, love you, Galaxy fam. Thank you, Josh and COG fam. Can't stick around tonight, going to listen tomorrow. Thanks, cheers. I think he's going out for St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody, by the way. Be safe, be fun.
Are you Irish?
I am not. Let's see. Am I? No, I don't think Irish is high on my list of things that I am. I am almost a quarter Italian, and then I have some German and some UK and some other things in there as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of a mogul. I'm English, Irish, and Scottish. I'm kind of the whole UK, English, Irish, and Scottish.
You got around. That's good. That's good for you. That's
Yeah.
You know what?
Somebody did, not me.
You don't
Somebody
need,
did.
You don't need the gene pool to be straight, Kevin. You want more branches and trees. That makes things better. Gary, $5 super chat says, in honor of Kev's jersey, have you all tried beaver tail? Have you ever had?
I have not.
I hope that's a real thing and I didn't just walk into something that I don't know about, but we'll see. Thanks, guys, for all the work you do put in the pod. It's Miller time. I know. Who doesn't have, where is the shirt that says it's Miller time for Harbor Miller? I would just like to know.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
That's good, dude. That's
And
like,
he can't even, he's 4 years from me being able to order one.
I think he was Lars player of the game for the Herediano match, and he got to hold up the beer, but he doesn't get to drink the beer. But yeah, it's always fun to see that. Adam, $5 super chat. I mean, here it is, and I think we touched on it. But what is Greg Vanney going to do against Minnesota? This is Adam's question. Do you guys think McCarthy earned the starting position now, or do you guys want to see him against a better team next week and against Minnesota? I mean, first of all, if he's starting against Minnesota, then now he's earned a starting position again. I don't know if Greg Vanney is going to take this game by game, week by week, however it is. But for John McCarthy, I don't know. What else does he need to prove? If
you try to deliver a message to Micovic, it doesn't work with one game. I think you need to say to him, sit down, watch how it's done, watch how this guy doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and then we'll work you back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think you're right. As of right now, I think Greg Vanney is sort of locked into a lineup. Not only that, let's pause for a second and just understand that the LA Galaxy in this month, the 3 losses that sort of open this month, right? And then the LA Galaxy get the win against Herediano. They get the draw against Portland. Now there's 2 more games still in March. But having said that, right, the Galaxy get a full week off until they go against Minnesota, right? So this is the first time, really outside of, I think, the first game and the second game, where the Galaxy have had that full week. So there's actually training. Having said that, there's less training than you think there are, because the LA Galaxy were off on Monday. They'll be off on Tuesday. And you say, well, Josh, why would they be doing that? Because they're tired. Those dudes been running all around. There hasn't been that many of them. They've all been playing games and minutes and resting and recovery. And we talked about injuries. We talked about Diego Fagundes. Diego Fagundes probably doesn't train for most of this week if he still has an issue with his hip. He's going to rest and try to get that recovered so that way he can play against Minnesota, because the Galaxy probably going to need him against Minnesota. Marco Royce, a guy who didn't dress up in Portland. And Greg Vanney talked about it in the previous game, which was, sort of a load management thing, right? A load management. They said they're worried about it. We talked to Marco Royce about his KT tape all the way from his hip all the way down to his ankle. And it's something that he's basically been dealing with and working on since last season. So these are all things that are sort of known. Joseph Paintsil's training, it looks like. And so we're expecting to get him back here in the next week and a half, 2 weeks. It feels like that's coming to a close. So this is the thing that happens whenever you actually get training time. You also get rest and recovery time. So the Galaxy off on Monday, off on Tuesday. They'll kick back at Wednesday, and then they have a game on Sunday whenever they head out to Minnesota, right? So this actually is one of the first breaks in times they get to hit the reset button, Kevin. They get to rest a little bit, then they get to hit the training field and actually work on some things before they head off to Minnesota.
But yeah, and again, they're on the road again. They traveled a lot of miles at the beginning of the season, and they played 7 games, they will have played 7 games by the end of March. And then the first Champions Cup game, a CONCACAF Champions Cup game, is April 1st. So essentially, it's 8 games. If March were 32 days, it'd be 8 games in March.
Yeah.
But the training time is important, because both Zanka and Christian Ramirez talked about still the fact that, hey, we're still starting to gel. the name tags are off now. We know everybody's name, but we still don't know how they're going to react on the field and what they're going to do. And one other thing before we run away from Micovic too much is with Garces, you saw something interesting. Vanney was very open about he's making mistakes, and he came in and kind of proved that. But he brought him on to play a few minutes, kept him out there, kept him involved. You can't do that with a goalkeeper, unfortunately. There's only one goalkeeper that can play. You're not going to change goalkeepers with 3 minutes left and let the other guy get a couple of reps. So it's a little more difficult in Novak's position because either he plays or he doesn't. You're not a little bit pregnant at goalkeeper. You can't come in and play a few minutes and sort of get your feet wet and get your confidence back. It's either you play 90 minutes or you watch 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's again. It's interesting. I can't wait to see the starting lineup against Minnesota. Like I am there. I am locked. I am loaded because I think there's going to be a lot of questions asked, answered, presented just by putting a starting lineup, much like it was in Portland, out there. Let's look at FOTMob, what FOTMob thought of the play from the LA Galaxy. Diego Fuentes 7.5, by the way. On that. Tucker Lepley 7.4, Aude 7.4 on the left-hand side. So the left-hand side doing a lot of work. 7.1 over with Peck, 7.3 for Parente. Harbor Miller at 6.6. I think he's getting jobbed on that. But again, wasn't his best game, and he only played for 67 minutes, right? So that was something that we watched. I want to make sure I get the sub time exactly correct for Miller. 64 minutes for Harbor Miller until Miki Imane comes in. And I think Imane did a good job whenever he came in. Again, Harbor Miller's young. I expect that Miki Imane should be the better player, but Greg Vanney has talked about how there's some flexibility in that, and certainly we'll see if they can do that. Let's go back to FOTMob because I think they had some interesting scores off the bench. Obviously, Christian Ramirez 7.2. Emiro Garces didn't come on enough for them to provide a ranking, but I guarantee it would be bad. But it's Zanka at the 7.7. Statistics love Zanka. Maybe that's not surprising. The Galaxy went out to get him. And we know that analytics are something the Galaxy use. And so far, a lot of the analytics love Zanka. I really like Zanka's game. Simple, compact, the ability to stretch the field whenever he needs to, the ability to be strong on challenges, not the fleetest of foot, but comfortable in possession. I mean, you put Maya Yoshida and Zanka back there, and it's not a bad look. And then the LA Galaxy can even do something like putting Emiro Garces out at that right back spot if you want the speed and sort of to do that. You can also move Emiro Garces up. You can move Miki Imane up. You can do all these things. So I think it really starts to open some things up. I am interested in the fact that does a team like Minnesota present more of a speed problem where you want Emiro Garces in the center instead of Zanka? The recovery speed with Zanka and Yoshida isn't great, right? That's the slower recovery speed, but they're probably not going to put themselves in as bad as situations either. So those are sort of the things. But I was just surprised that the statistics really like Zanka. They are a Zanka fan.
Well, and Zonka's pass, as I recall, the pass that led to the goal came from about the midfield stripe down into right the edge of the box. So a good 35, 40-yard pass. He was asked afterwards whether he saw Ramirez, and apparently he didn't see Ramirez clearly. It wasn't like he was throwing the ball right to Ramirez. He said, I knew he was up there somewhere. And you talk about the no tactic zone. He said, I knew he was up there somewhere, and I thought, screw it. I'm just going to send the ball up there, let him go fight to get it, and see what happens. And, Christian Ramirez, he talked about his goal after the Herediano game and about how, once we get the first one, once we get the first win, once we get the first goal, everything sort of becomes easier after that. And I thought he came off the bench, but 8 minutes after coming off, he scores a goal.
Yeah.
I think he's starting to get a little bit of confidence and feeling good about himself as well.
Yeah. I think you're right. Adam, $5 super chat. Does the team fly out of Minnesota Friday morning since the game is Saturday at 1:30? Yeah, they're going to fly Friday afternoon. It's a PM travel day for them. So basically that means that they will train in the morning, and in the morning is probably going to be a walkthrough more than anything. And then the game is 1:30 p.m. And that 1:30, it says Sunday on here. It's Saturday. It is Saturday, March 22nd, by the way. The game is at 1:30. The actual kickoff time is 1:40 p.m. And so the LA Galaxy will get to play in Minnesota in an afternoon game, which might be good depending on weather. And I haven't checked the weather yet because it's still too far out to really pay super attention. But it might be good still to play in the sunshine instead of in the night coldness. For
Minnesota. That's a morning start body time for the Galaxy.
What was the one that I was thinking was, I watched the results, and looking at the results, there were some weird sort of results in this, right? Certainly the LAFC losing to Austin at home was an interesting one. That was a body clock game for me because that was an early game at BMO for LAFC, and then they lose to Austin, which it's 2 hours later, and that's a body clock game for me. I think body clock is absolutely underappreciated, understood. Like people just are like, oh, that doesn't matter what time you're playing and what time your body thinks it is and all this other stuff. I mean, Landon Donovan talked about just playing the MLS Cups in the afternoon and how that's different. And not only is it an MLS Cup, but you have a different schedule. Like, game days, you usually take a nap, you usually do this stuff. The schedule of these things is super important for these guys, and I always think the body clock messes with things.
Well, and you're onto something. I talked to some people at the Seattle Seahawks a few years ago. They have a sleep coach. It's becoming more and more popular. A lot of professional teams have sleep coaches. They do things like take your own pillow on the road. Stay on your body clock schedule. Don't adjust your clock when your watch when you get to another time zone. NBA and NHL teams forever. NBA teams have had morning shoot-arounds on the day of game. NHL teams always have morning skates. A lot of these body clock coaches are telling the teams, don't do that. It's much better if you spend that time in bed. Sleep in. Don't get up to go to the ice and skate around for a few minutes. And you don't need that. You're already good. That's why you're in the NHL. You don't need to practice the morning of a game.
Right.
And it just so happened I talked to somebody, just over the weekend about Formula One drivers. They'll race in Monaco one weekend and in China the next weekend. How do you deal with that? And he said they all have their own private jets and they just sleep whenever. So they might be sleeping at noon because where they're from, it's 8 o'clock at night,
right,
or whatever, 10 o'clock at night. So you're onto something. I mean, the body clock thing is huge, and no soccer league, I don't think, plays in a country that certainly there's a league in Russia, but it's all around Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's 4 time zones and 3,000 miles is a continental sized country. And if you fly across the country and play an early afternoon game, you're playing in the morning where you came from. That's tough.
Yeah, it is. It's always an interesting one, but I just always like studying the body clock. It's going to be an early body clock time for the LA Galaxy, 100%. So 1:30, that is Pacific time. So And
imagine if they didn't have charters.
Yeah.
Maybe a delay of their flight. Maybe getting to Minnesota is tough. Maybe a connection somewhere. The charter really makes a big difference.
Can you believe pre-COVID that we were talking about the charters and all that stuff, and then they all of a sudden, guess what? Everybody made it work. Like, it was one of those things. It's like now everybody flies charters all the time. It is something that is probably not talked about enough in terms of everybody just assumes that they have had charters forever, and you and I are living proof that is not the case, right?
I flew with the Galaxy I went on a couple of flights with them. One I remember to Dallas was just ridiculous. And someone came up and asked AJ De La Garza, "Are you guys a sports team?" And he said, "No, we're a boy band." But Landon Donovan sitting in a middle seat. One time I saw Zlatan waiting in line to get on a Southwest flight. He's like A1 through 15, and there goes Zlatan. That was hilarious, but not what professional athletes should be going through.
100% not there. Looks like there was a whole bunch of travelers. I heard 250 plus was I think, or around 250 was the supporters that traveled up there and got to go to the wonderful Providence Park up there and enjoy Portland a little bit and got away with a point. So always good. Just looking at some of the scores, Orlando coming up, they tied 2-2 with Red Bull on the road. That's an interesting one. Chicago 2-1. Chicago's starting to come alive a little bit there. Austin, Charlotte 2-0 over Cincinnati. Charlotte's one to watch. DC and Montreal at 0s. That's interesting because I think Beneteke actually scored a goal and it got waved off. But that was for using his hand. And certainly the question about Christian Ramirez, whether or not he used his hand on his. I looked at that a bunch of times. I didn't see it. By the way, somebody in the chat was criticizing, saying, if it would have happened to the Galaxy, I would have 100% said that it was a penalty. I've actually already said that I think it was a penalty. My whole thing is that the referee should have made that call if he thought he did, but instead he played advantage, which means he thought it was outside the box. That's my guess of what happened. I don't know. There's no way you pull a penalty. By the way, if you play advantage on a penalty, like if there's a penalty and you play advantage, it does wipe out the penalty. I imagine I went back and looked at the laws of the game today to sort of try to figure that out, and briefly was able to get it before I was pulled in another direction. But yeah, it's there. So I got Jam says Zlatan is A1 and the rest of the team boards with C, the C group, right? Yeah, Zlatan up front. Well, I think you were talking about Landon Donovan once talked about like giving up his first class seats to different players, like depending on who they were, so that way they could be more comfortable in first class, right? Have we talked about that?
Well, I think different teams had different rules, but I think the Galaxy rules was the DPs always flew in first class, and I think the coach did too, because it would be weird to have a player in first class, not the coach. But there were players that said, "Hey, you were the player of the game," and they'd give their seat up to someone who had a good game, who maybe was a Harbor Miller type. I mean, could you imagine Harbor Miller playing a great game? I could totally see Landon saying, "Hey, kid, take the first class seat, have the meal,
yeah, exactly.
enjoy the warm nuts."
Yeah, it's a good, it's good life up there in first class. Even better on charter, as Greg said. Whenever they went down to Herediano, it wasn't as bad because they at least all got their own row. The guys could stretch out and sleep and do that sort of thing.
And guys will be sleeping on the way up to Minnesota or getting treatment. Sometimes that used to happen to Ashley Cole a lot. He would get treatment on the planes.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about? Do you want to mention the Dejan thing? Are we there yet?
Yeah, we can. So, what I think some people saw, and I don't have the tweet. It was a busy day for me, so I forgot to bring it up. But one of our Galaxy family, Leslie, was trying to auction off a signed Dejan Joveljic jersey. It actually said "Happy Birthday" on it, by the way. And so she was trying to auction off. So, I got in touch with her and just wanted to make sure it was cool. I retweeted it. You guys went out and bought some raffle tickets and did some things to start to put that over. But I wasn't the only one that took notice, and Kevin and I were actually looking around for what we could do to help and all that sort of thing. But I think Dejan beat us to it, and as you would expect from the former LA Galaxy player. So why don't you pick up the story from there?
So I contacted Sporting Kansas City and asked them. I said, look, we're hearing that Dejan heard about this and did something to help. And if he did, he needs to be, that needs to be publicized, that Dejan, stood up and did something. And so they responded. And the guy I talked to in the communications department, I'll just read what he wrote. He said, I talked to Dejan about this today. He said he saw her post looking to auction off her signed jersey to raise money. And he went through some of his contacts with the Galaxy to ensure that he, Dejan, was able to cover the cost directly. And he didn't want to talk about it. He said, I think typically he does this kind of stuff and tries to keep it private. And that's what he wanted to do in this case. He didn't want to talk about it, but he did make sure that whatever he could do got done. And I believe Leslie gets to keep her jersey. Maybe she's going to get a Sporting Kansas City jersey in the mail soon too.
You never know. But Leslie is a good G. I know she's working. She was actually going to auction off a scarf. Instead, she refunded the people who gave her money. She said you could refund. I'll refund you the money. I know there were people in the Discord, in the COG Discord, who were like, "Hey, if I win the jersey, I'm gonna let her keep it," like type of thing. Like it's not that I want you to have the money and keep the thing. But I always like seeing the Galaxy community come together whenever that happens, just to be able to.
Well, and Dan's a young guy. And he's kind of a cocky young guy, and he could have easily just said, "Hey, you guys traded me away. I don't care about you anymore." But nope, he didn't do that, and he doesn't want to talk about it.
That's Dejan. He doesn't even like to talk to us. Well, whenever he came in, my favorite thing ever was whenever Dejan comes in, he goes, he was talking to us and he goes, I don't even listen to people who can't even pronounce my name right. And then the next reporter who asked the question said Dejan's name wrong, and that was my favorite part. That was one of those. I was like, aha, there you go, you got it, buddy. That's how it works. Schedule coming up for the LA Galaxy. The game coming up on Saturday, 1:30 p.m. That game is away at Minnesota, but the LA Galaxy getting a good 6 days off there and taking the 2 days, Mondays and Tuesdays off. Then you have Wednesday, Thursday will be a press conference day, and then Friday in the PM they'll travel out to Minnesota. The Galaxy will play that game. Then they'll be home to close out March, and that will be on March 29th, where the LA Galaxy hosts Orlando City in the first Saturday night game at Dignity Health Sports Park this season. So 7:30 p.m., 7:40 p.m. is your kickoff at Dignity Health Sports Park.
Isn't that a weird game? I mean, if you look at the Galaxy schedule, you just totally assume they're flying to Orlando for that one. Just the way things have gone so far.
You would figure. And once again, I'd like to point out that the LA Galaxy will have spent, by the time this month is over, 12,020 miles traveled and 28 hours in the air. So this has not been an easy one. Going to Minnesota is not going to be easy. And it just continues to be a tough break for it. As you mentioned, Kevin, the LA Galaxy taking on Tigres in CONCACAF Champions Cup. The first game is Tuesday, April 1st at, get this, 8:15 p.m. Pacific time.
Because why not?
Because what usually after work for a game, I will go directly to the stadium. If I go directly to the stadium from work, even though it usually takes me like an hour or two, I'm going to get there before the gates open because The game is so late. I remember back in the day, Kevin, 8 p.m. starts for CONCACAF Champions Cup. I remember those days whenever we would be at Dignity Health Sports Bar at StubHub Center, at Home Depot Center, whatever it was called at the time. We would be there. It'd be 8. I've never seen an 8:15. That feels a little late. I was complaining about this to my father, who said, well, then don't go. And I'm like, what, are you crazy? And I'm like, no, I'm going to the game. Of course I'll be there. Anyway, so that is an 8:15 game. Then the LA Galaxy will travel down to Estadio Universitario. And now, Kevin, you've been to Tigres' home down in Mexico.
Yes, I have. There are 2 stadiums in Monterrey. As we know, Rayados plays in a beautiful, brand new stadium tucked into a hillside. Monterrey is surrounded by hills. If you've never been there, beautiful, amazing, beautiful city. And the Monterrey and the Rayados Stadium is tucked right into the hills there. That's where they'll play the World Cup games next summer. The Estadio Universitario is on the campus of the university there. It is an old school Latin American poured concrete kind of bowl stadium. It's exactly what you imagine the old Coliseum,
right?
But about half that size. That's kind of what it's like. They do have some suites though, not the kind of suites we're used to here, but there are corporate suites there. But for the most part, the fan experience probably similar to León. It's not an atypical Mexican stadium,
right?
But it's certainly not as nice as the one across town.
So anyway, the Galaxy will then travel down to take on Tigres on Tuesday, April 8th. That game kicks off at 6 p.m. Pacific time, which I believe is an 8 p.m. start in Monterrey. Are they 2 hours? I think they're 2 hours.
I believe that. So, and if you're going down, by the way, those of you going down, it's right on a subway stop. It's extremely easy to get to, which is an advantage of a Rayados Stadium, which is very difficult to get to. So if you're going down, the subway goes right there. It won't be a problem.
Yeah. By the way, Lazarus says, huge congratulations and pat on the back to all the G's that completed the LA Marathon yesterday. I did see a bunch of G's on social media showing off their medals for completing the LA Marathon. 26.2 miles is 26.2 miles. Too short for me. I need more distance really. Whenever I'm going to run. So I just read a quote and said, better to be bad at running than good at sitting on the couch. And I am 50-50 on that quote right now. I was contemplating that for sure. But Adam, $5 super chat. The theme is Churro Fest versus Orlando. I forgot how many people will receive churros at the entrance. Who cares? It's churros. I love churros. They better be good churros, Kevin. If they're bad churros,
how about churros while you're running?
That sounds like a recipe for disaster. A lot of things.
By the way, apparently Alyssa Thompson of Angel City knew that there were a lot of soccer fans in the marathon because she was asked yesterday. Angel City opened its season, and it was the first time they have not played before a sellout crowd in their opener. And she was asked where everybody was, and she said, well, there's a lot of things to do today. People ran the LA Marathon.
That's right.
So I guess she knew.
Hey, this is LA, all right? There is stuff to do every weekend. We had a banner weekend at the Train Club, let me tell you. It was the second busiest weekend we've ever had.
She did not mention the Train Club.
She didn't?
I'll plant that seed in her mind.
We drew more than most USL teams, so we did over 4,100 riders for the weekend. So again, busiest miniature train in the United States, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know who could gauge that, but I know that for our scale, our thing, we had a lot of people.
That was really good. You used gauge and scale talking about mini trains.
That's how it works. By the way,
good.
Had probably 5 or 6 listeners come out over the weekend. So it was great. We had a good time.
The ones that weren't running the marathon, clearly.
Mike Gray goes, do you guys remember what the press box churros were like? Do you remember whenever they had press box churros for us? They were like paperweights. You could bang them on the desk.
You could drumsticks.
You'd chip a tooth trying to eat them.
Yeah, they were like relay batons.
They were. So that's why I'm worried about Churro Fest. That's why I am concerned. I hope that they can do Churro Fest the honor that it is. So I'm excited for Orlando coming in for that game.
Speaking of, I'm going through withdrawal from pupusas. We got to do something.
You are.
That
I've been fine. I've been getting my pupusas. I've been hanging in there. But again, the LA Galaxy finishing it off. It is Minnesota on Saturday, and then a week from that Saturday, or from this Saturday, will be Orlando coming home. So that's what we got. Kevin, is there anything?
It looks like the Brady Bunch thing.
It does. Everybody's looking at each other. Let's look at standings real quick because I thought that was interesting. Miami over there with 10 points, 4 games played, 3 wins, 1 draw. They have it as a tie. They couldn't just put D for draw. I don't know. Just seems unnecessary. Miami, Philadelphia. Philadelphia lost, by the way, over the weekend. Miami, Philadelphia, Columbus, Charlotte, your top 4. Nashville, Chicago, New York City, Cincinnati, DC round out your top 9. New York Red Bulls are at 10th, other team in MLS Cup. The 11th place team is Orlando, coming to the LA Galaxy at the end of the month. Then there's Atlanta, Montreal, New England, and Toronto at the very
Keep
bottom.
an eye on Chicago. Greg Berhalter's doing some really good things, and he made some good personnel moves.
It seems like it. Western Conference right now, as you pointed out, Vancouver at the top, San Diego right underneath them, St. Louis with 8, Colorado with 8. So 12 points for Vancouver, 8 for San Diego, 8 for St. Louis, 8 for Colorado, 7 points for Minnesota.
All of them unbeaten.
Yep, absolutely. 7 points for Minnesota, 6 points for San Jose, who lost over the weekend. Austin, 6 points. LAFC, 6 points. Salt Lake, 6 points. That is your top 9. And then it goes Seattle with 4, Dallas with 4, Portland with 4, Kansas City with 1, Houston with 1, and LA with 1. LA sitting at 15th in the bottom there. But like I said, close your eyes. Don't pay any attention to those standings for at least another month. And then you can start to pick and wonder. I will say this. If you're the LA Galaxy, you're only, and I say this, you say this nicely, you are only, 11 points from first place. It's not that much yet. It's only, like 4 games separating themselves between Vancouver and the bottom. It already feels like a moat is starting to widen there, Kevin. If you were going to make the jump, it's like an iceberg that starts to crack and somebody's going to jump over the crack, right? And so, as you first start, that crack is small, so you want to jump over it quick. But if you wait too long and the crack's too big, that feels like what the LA Galaxy are doing. The iceberg is breaking away, pulling apart.
Well, actually on the standings, I like the T instead of D, because I look at D and I think it says defeats, and I get all confused.
That's got to be a writer thing. I have no idea what that could possibly be. So, all right.
Well, by the way, Dejan Joveljic, speaking about him, scored a goal.
He did. Not getting the service that he deserves. Of course, I mean, looking at the LA Galaxy, that was a crazy game. If you watched it, was 3-3 final between Sporting Kansas City and Minnesota. 6 goals in that game was about 4 goals too many probably for both of those teams. So we'll see how that goes. Anything else you want to touch on?
Goal, he has 2 goals in 4 matches, and that was the game tying goal. So, you do something nice for somebody, and
it comes back. It comes back around. I agree, 100%.
So Leslie, you're responsible for that.
100.
Take a victory lap.
Yep. I don't know that she'd want Sporting Kansas City. Maybe she does now. I mean, I can understand being.
She could be. It'll maybe be her second favorite team.
100%. All right. Anything else you want to talk about? We good? Can we call
I had nothing to talk about when we started.
Everybody knows. You went through it in the first 10 minutes. We caught that on pretty fast.
I was in a hurry. I'm double parked. Gotta go.
That's right. In your own house. Understood. All right. Let's see. The LA Galaxy coming up on Saturday against Minnesota United. Once again, that game is on Saturday, not Sunday, even though it's what it says. 1:30, 1:40 p.m. is your kickoff time on MLS Season Pass. That's where you're going to find it. The LA Galaxy going against Minnesota. We'll preview that game on Thursday. All right. Cool. All right. I think that about does it. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on all the social medias at KBaxter11, head on over to LATimes.com for all of his writing. NASCAR, F1, soccer, baseball, anything and everything. Hockey. That's right. Hockey. I forgot. Hockey. Anything and everything from Mr. Panda over there covering all the sports for the LA Times, LATimes.com. If you're looking for me on all the socials, it's at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can find us there. We'll try to do more notes and quotes as we continue on with that series and with the LA Galaxy's play. Interested to see what that starting lineup is coming up on Saturday. All right, LA Galaxy taking on Minnesota United coming up on Saturday. That's a 1:30, 1:40 p.m. kickoff time. So enjoy that MLS Season Pass. We will be there, have your coverage for it. Can't wait to see how that plays out. All right, for Mr. Kevin, the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening. You've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.